Here's another opportunity to show difference between the factory stuff and aftermarket stuff. If you see there, this is a factory crank with the factory knurling, and my fingernails will not grab these. I cannot get into them, and it's actually relatively smooth. And you do have, if you put a rubber seal on this, they don't usually leak very much. Here's an aftermarket Chinese crank, probably circa 2017, and my fingernail grabs this. These knurls are much deeper than these knurls. So the rubber seal is not going to keep the oil from weeping out of there. It just can't do it because it can't get in the grooves. So the options that we can do are, I put it in a crank polisher and I polish it down with some sandpaper and smooth it out. And if you spin it in a lathe real slow, you can feel it being, rough, jagged. So I do that till I get it as smooth as I can get it. Now you got to be careful that you don't take too much off, because you'll make it out of round and you'll make things 10 times worse. And then you can spin it up to more RPM, and you can see how with the engine at speed it actually gets smooth, so it won't leak too much. That's a viable solution, and it helps. Most cranks nowadays are coming without the knurl, which there's debate on whether that works or not. But I will tell you that a factory crank with a rubber seal rarely leaks because of the knurling. It usually leaks because of something else. A Chinese crank with knurling like this almost always leaks out here. Another thing to pay attention to that's staring us in the face is the oil slinger for the rear main seal. Look at this one and see how it's thinner. It's kind of chamfered here. And this one here is thicker. Quite a bit thicker. It's chamfered, but not as much. So when you put it in a block, you have to make sure that it's not rubbing. And if it's rubbing, the fix is pretty easy, and even the backyard Joe can do it. If you have access to a lathe, you put it in a lathe and you put a chamfer on it. Or you just take your block and take a die grinder and put a chamfer in it. I mean, one way or the other works. Either or is acceptable. If this hits the block, you're going to have some issues, so you got to check for that. But again, most of the cranks nowadays don't have this problem anymore. The cranks nowadays are pretty good. Since we're talking about differences, here's another one. This is usually undercut. The camera's not on, but it's very lightly undercut. And this one here looks like it's not undercut. So you would have to chamfer your flex plate so it would fit flat on there. Just a bunch of little things to pay attention to. This is what separates engine assemblers from engine builders. You got to know what to look for. Details matter.